What up, guys? Welcome to the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Today we have a episode where I'm talking with Eugene and my partner in the Jiu-Jitsu Open competition, Jeff. We had him on last year around the same time after the Louisville competition, and we've been doing it a year now across the country, and so we wanted to kind of catch up and talk about it. And so we'll go into the competition, talking about running the competition, some of that stuff, and we'll give you some ideas. We'll also talk about one of the things I thought was real interesting was Jeff's like warm up. We'll say it that way. His
Lack thereof,
warm.
maybe.
Well, yeah, that surprised me because usually it's like the complete opposite for most people. But his warm up, if you want to call it that, how interesting that is, because that sort of took for him. He's a person that gets into his head. He said he gets real nervous before matches, but this sort of fixed that. So that was kind of interesting to me. So we'll get into that. And again, this episode will cover a lot of the Chewjitsu Open stuff. By the way, if you guys are interested in competing with us at the Chewjitsu Open, check us out. You can go to our website. You can just Google search Chewjitsu Open. You'll find our dates. We got Chicago coming up soon. We'll have some other places in Michigan, elsewhere. So again, if you guys want to join us, we'd love to have you out there. But again, big thanks to our sponsors for helping make this podcast happen. Grapple Science. Grapple Science is a company that originally was created by a couple of black belts who used to work for and help found the company Killcliff. So they were doing supplements and things like that for CrossFit and for other places. And then they, were looking at jiu-jitsu, and they wanted to create a supplement that would help, boost people's energy, give them more focus, and improve cognitive function, but without the stimulants, right? Because a lot of times when you get like a quote energy supplement, the only thing they do is basically pump in caffeine, other stimulants, and you get jittery, and definitely not the best thing before rolling, because you're doing a cardio intensive exercise and you're getting a blast of caffeine. It's not ideal for long bouts of cardio sessions. So they came up with their cognition supplement, which is a non-stimulant based energy supplement to help improve focus and cognition, cognitive function, and give you more during your training. And again, it's a great supplement. I know we've had guys like Ryan Aiken on the podcast who said he was using it when he had the grueling week at the PGF, where you're foggy, you're exhausted because you're having these grueling matches every single day. And he said it gave him a bit of an edge to be more mentally focused during those periods where he was pretty exhausted. And again, I've used it. I like it. My wife has used it before, and she feels like she gets a little bit more of a pep from it. Again, the pep that you're going to get from it is not, you're not going to feel that sort of like you just drank a mountain of coffee or something and you're all jittery. You're just going to be a little bit more lasered in. Like I took it the other day when I was doing a bunch of flow rolling. So we were doing a bunch of play wrestling, and I had the supplement that day, and I was a little bit more zeroed in and even a little bit more creative with the movements that I was using. So anyways, if you guys want to check it out, it's a great supplement. It's called Cognition. It's on their website at grapplescience.com. And the promo code is Chewjitsu20, CHEWJITSU 20 for 20% off the order. Also, if you guys want to get a CBD supplement from one of the premier CBD companies out there, you can check out charlottesweb.com. charlottesweb.com is the website. Again, if you're not sure why you might want to use CBD, for me, again, there's tons of different reasons why you might. For me, CBD sort of represents a part of my recovery sort of supplementation, things that I would take for recovery. So, I like things like magnesium, which I find some value in. I take some other vitamins and supplements as directed by my coach. And then, like some zinc and things like that. And then on top of that, I will take the CBD supplement from Charlotte's Web. I've tried different ones. I'll use the tincture, which is the eyedropper, and at times I'll use their Stay Sleep gummy, which is a CBN's gummy. But again, no matter what I'm using, I find that it's best for me, at least when I use it at nighttime, and it sort of uses as a supportive element to my sleep. I find that it just helps me sleep a little bit better, get better sleep cycles, and which is going to help me improve my sleep, which helps me improve my performance. As we all know, a good night's sleep is worth a lot when it comes to getting in there and training hard. And if you're pushing yourself, if you're lifting weights, you're rolling, you're doing jiu-jitsu, you're doing all this stuff, it's a good idea to have something to support your recovery. And it's one of the supplements I use. So if you guys want to check them out, go to their website at charlottesweb.com, and the promo code is Chewjitsu30 for 30% off the order. If you guys want to get some new jiu-jitsu gear, it's one of the things that I always tell people. If like maybe you're in a little bit of a funk, go buy new gi, rash guards, whatever. It's always fun to go mix it up. But there is a company, Epic Roll. Many of you guys, if you listen to the podcast, you've heard about them. Great company. They support a lot of young up-and-coming grapplers and fighters. They also make a lot of good gear, everything from t-shirts and rash guards and shorts to gis and joggers and fanny packs, anything and everything. They make it. You can check them out. They've got great stuff, good designs, good customer service. It's available at epicrollbjj.com. If you go to their website, you can kind of browse through it, see if you find something you like. And if you do, use the promo code Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order. And if you guys want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. We appreciate you guys for all your support over there. And again, we give a bunch of different perks for when you join up. If you guys want to get the details on them, you can check the website, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. But again, a couple of things that you'll get when you join up, one of which is a warm-up routine specifically focused on Jiu-Jitsu athletes. So a lot of people don't appreciate a good warm-up or a good cool-down routine following their training sessions. Can be very useful. And a lot of times you can do the same stuff, you just do it for longer holds. As far as the cool down situation, Eugene came up with some different sequences that he used at a camp, and I used to this day, and used bits and pieces of to this day, that I find very helpful. Again, they're tailored to jiu-jitsu athletes and jiu-jitsu practitioners because we have stuff that our bodies are affected by a little different than, say, other sports, and so it's tailored to that. And if you guys want to get access to it, it comes with all the other perks that are offered with our Patreon. Go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast to get access to it. And guys, if you want to get my daily email where I send out everything from specific training tips, diet ideas, checklists of stuff that I think might be useful to you, books I'm reading, and anything and everything jiu-jitsu related, and even a little bit more so than other stuff too. Anything I think might be useful to you, then go to my website. You can get my Roll Longer email newsletter that I send out every day at my website, chewjitsu.net/join. And when you join up, you'll get access to an ebook that I give away called Focused Jiu-Jitsu. So I think there's a lot of importance to focused rolling and focused training. And when you go into a gym, a lot of times it's just open mats. A lot of times it's open rolling, those sorts of things. And you can get a lot from your open rolling, especially if you know how to structure it for yourself. And you don't have to have a coach to do this. This is something you can do at any level. And if you go to my website at chewjitsu.net/join, I will give you a free ebook that goes through 12 different strategies on how to do that. And I also give away a video along with it. So in case you don't want to read, I can just explain it to you in the video. And then you get my daily email that you can read and join the thousands that do. And you can unsubscribe at any time. So guys, with that said, let's jump into this podcast with Jeff and talk about the Jiu-Jitsu Open.
And you shared a fun story about Jeff, like tournaments essentially. Jeff came in at brown belt and he's kind of on the like chopping block essentially to get promoted. And then like him and Dustin went, and you have a good story to share about that, what you saw.
Yeah, I think I shared this the last time we had him on the podcast. It's a good story of like someone that like took something and then ran with it. We watched him and Dustin, and at the time they both had like the same haircut, and they both were like wrestling for top position. Sure. And it was like, like the very similar styles, and both of them, I had them do positional rolls from off their backs, and both were kind of struggling there. So I talked to Jeff. I was like, hey, you got to develop this. I think we did a private lesson or two, went over a couple things, and then it was like almost exactly a year later, he sends me a text message of him with a video of him finishing a guy, like pulling guard and finishing people from the bottom game, which at the time was just nothing he did, because he came from MMA, which MMA, you don't pull guard and go for leg locks. You take people down and get on top of them, and that's what you do, right? So it was a very different game. Now he's he still plays, he can play either or, but now he's more of a guard player and attacks the legs and everything else.
Yeah, but the important thing is, like, you battle tested it. You went to a tournament and you did it, and so you developed this part of your game, and then you went to a tournament. You actually shared a video of a tournament you did, and you're kind of like a big. You always surprise me because you always jump into tournaments like you don't care, like it's not a big deal to you for some reason. I wonder, what is that all about?
That was the first tournament it was like that. So what Chewy's talking about is February 2021, whenever you got promoted.
Yeah,
and I did it, and Chewy pulled me aside and lit a fire under me, and I made it my mission to learn the bottom game, or to develop the bottom game. a year later was the Louisville tournament, and I jumped into that one, and I won multiple matches. Just pulled guard first time in 16, 17 years of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Pulled guard in a tournament, won multiple matches, and now I'm a guard pulling butt scooter.
What was like the thought process? Like, how do you even start that process of like, all right, we want to do a tournament, but then you have to think about rule sets and like what's going to work well and the logistics. Like, what does that process kind of look like?
Started with Chewy. So we already had a program with BJJ Fanatics where we were, my wife and I got involved in a program that was already established, had some challenges over a few tournaments. And then Chewy came in with a brand new idea, and he reached out to me and he pitched his idea. So I'll pass it to you, Chewy.
I don't know how it came up, but we were talking and we got to talking about the competition and everything else. And then I think it's like, I don't remember how it came about, but basically there had been an idea sitting on like in my head somewhere that like, if something ever happens that this could come to fruition, then I'll do something with this, but I don't have the ability to do this. Right. So I'll just set this over here for now. But the idea was to have a tournament that was focused on like a sub only, but with a winner or loser, because true sub onlys where it either drags on forever or it's a draw, they suck, because then you have two people that like essentially there's just no incentive. One of the things about point competitions is like, you think about fighting competition, there's this conflict and it's resolved at the end. There's a winner, there's a loser. Like imagine watching like a football game and at the end of it, it's like a tie. That would be the lamest Super Bowl ever, right? Like, but it's like, no, there's going to be a winner and a loser. If we have to go to overtime, we're going to figure it out. And so true sub only, I don't like. And then I don't like a lot of the other formats that are sub only, where it's like sub only, but then we do special overtime rules. So nobody actually goes for it in the regulation, like EBI. It's a fun rule set in theory, but in practice, it turns into do nothing for the first regulation, save all your energy for the overtime rounds. And then the point-based stuff, they have their problems too. They all do. And I'm not saying ours doesn't either, but my thing was like, let's make a tournament format where the whole goal is just to go, where you're rewarded for just going for it. And there's even maybe a little bit of uncertainty sometimes as to whether or not you're winning because it's a judge's decision. Think about fighting in MMA. Like if you've been a fighter and you went past the first round, you don't know what those judges saw. You might know what you feel, but your feelings can sometimes not be very objective. So when it goes to the decision, you're always kind of, man, I should get this, or maybe I don't know. Right. And so I think that it's created an environment where, that's what I wanted to do, is just go. And part of the reason why is because so many people, when they go into competitions, they get in their own heads about, well, what if I lose this points or whatever? I just wanted to basically just go. Like, don't worry about the rules. Let's just attack each other and let's just try to finish each other. So we took out the weight classes, because the issue with a lot of regional tournaments is the numbers just don't support so many weight classes, because you go in and you might have a huge amount of people in one weight class, and then you go to the next one and there's nobody there. But because of the weight categories, it's, and they might only be separated by 8 pounds or something. Like, well, like now this guy has nobody to roll with, but there's 20 dudes over on this one. So we did the Madison bracketing, where we just match people up and just plug them in. So this way you could make a lot with a little, so to speak. So if you have a smaller regional tournament, you can still get a lot of matches in, and the people that show up can still get a good experience. And then the round robin was kind of just a byproduct of that. Like, what did the people in jiu-jitsu lack the most in competitions? They don't get experience, right? Like they go in, they like, let's say if you're a new competitor, you might go in and lose your first match. It's probably going to happen, right? We go in, and when you lose your first match, that's it. Whereas in wrestling, you would at least had, like in high school wrestling, as an example, you would still have double elimination, and you would also have a lot more competition opportunities. But jiu-jitsu people, it's really hard. It's expensive. Yeah. So the idea was, let's help people turn off the brain so they can just become very aggressive, because that's a skill that you can take over to other competitions, point-based or not. You get lots of matches, and even if this tournament ends up being a little bit on the smaller side, we're still going to like make it work to where you get some matches. And so that's what I was focused on, because when I talk to people, like when you just from being around in the space that I am, and people sending me questions, the things that people don't like about competitions: one, they don't like going in and having to learn some complicated rule system that they're only going to use every now and again because they don't compete that much. They don't want to get like stalled on by points. They don't want to lose one match and not have a chance to do another one, because that's the way that the tournament works. And, a lot of people have no idea what they're doing with cutting weight. And so just kind of eliminating all those factors and just telling people like, hey, just come do your jiu-jitsu. That's all you got to do. That's it. That's all. And we'll match up as best we can. And so that was kind of the sort of the thinking that I had. And I had kind of like an idea of what that might look like. And then so when Jeff and I were talking, they had kind of, I guess you would call kind of a branding problem to some degree. And I was like, well, like, why don't we try this out and see if it works? And I'll get behind it. And if it does, then, because obviously he has a lot of skill sets and stuff actually making the damn thing happen. Like if it was like the Chewjitsu Open and I ran it, it would be just a terrible disaster. And so like, like he had the ability to put it together, knew how it would work, could deliver people like an amazing experience when they got there. And I had this idea of how the tournament could work that could answer a lot of problems that people had in competition. And I had a, bit of an ability to spread the message. And so we just kind of came together and we did our first sort of test run in July of 2023.
Jeff, how did it turn out? Like, what do you think? Like the first iteration was at the gym, right? We had some, I was there helping out. I think that we had some temperature issues, right? It was really hot.
It's like the hottest day of the year.
It was the hottest day of the year.
It was the hottest weekend of the year. Like the index was 110 and we had 2 of our air conditioning units go out that week. I mean, it was just like the worst possible thing you could have happen.
But how many people were at that tournament? Do you recall the numbers?
We had hit capacity. We had to shut it down. I think we had 180.
180, yeah.
Which now, like it was huge then.
It was big.
We had 5 mats going. We started matches at like 10 o'clock in the morning and went until 6 p.m. at night. It was an all-day affair. A ton of matches. Now, if we only have 180, we're like, man, this tournament sucks.
Yeah. Well, not to mention all the like people watching, spectators,
right? Everybody brings
body
family members and stuff. Oh, bro,
slammed in the gym. It was a really cool event.
It was interesting, right? Like it was neat to see that. But like, what did you guys learn from that? Besides, like, obviously facility issues, which you have really no control over. Like, what did you learn from that experience moving forward?
I think for me, what I learned is that we had the magic recipe. Like we had it. What we had no idea how successful it would be. We had no idea if 10 people would show up or 100 people would show up, and we shattered our goals. We would have been happy with 100 people, and we got so many we had to shut down registrations. So the biggest lesson I learned was that we've got the magic recipe to make a successful tournament that people want to experience. Now, how do we make it bigger and better? Where do we go from here?
Yeah. It's funny that you talk about the first Chewjitsu Open in Louisville and now this most recent one in Louisville, and you have to shut it down because you're at a bigger venue. You're at the Crown Plaza Hotel, which was, how many mats do you guys have?
We had 10 mats.
10 mats.
Over 600 people.
And you have to shut it down.
Over 3 times as large as the one a year and a half ago.
Did you all expect that? Or like, were you like, maybe it might hit there? You knew kind of the numbers trending. You kind of have an idea what the numbers look like, but you kind of had an idea.
We expected growth. We had about 500 or so people at Louisville last year. So we expected growth, but did not expect to have to shut down registrations. That was awesome. It was a problem, but at least it was a good problem.
Good problem. Yeah. So how do you solve that problem next time?
Bigger venue. Yeah. Already working on it.
Yeah. That venue was awesome though. I really thought it was a good venue.
It's gorgeous.
Crown Plaza was nice. Like, plenty of room to move around. You guys did mat space for practice, for people to practice on, which was awesome, which I think that was a new addition.
Yeah, in a separate space.
Space completely. Yeah. It was really good. I thought like you had food vendors, you had obviously sponsors, something we'll get into, like sponsorship. So, sometimes people want a different incentive, not just competition, but sometimes people want to make a little money, which is crazy to think about, Chewy. That's probably not something that was going on unless you fought MMA back when you started competing.
Well, that was what I posted about, I guess, going into the Louisville competition because of our sponsors. Like, I was talking about this, I think, in a video. I don't even know. Technically, it's not even, if you wanted to get into just dollars and cents, probably isn't the smartest financial decision to just take all your sponsorship money and pump it back into the competitors to just give it away to them. But it's what we do. And so like when we have a sponsorship come on, right, like we take the money that they put into the competition and it gets added to the pool of money that gets spread amongst the absolute winners. And so I remember like winning my very first MMA fight. Or my first pro MMA fight. I won like $500. And, I remember thinking, how cool was that? I won $500 for a fight. And then, at our recent competition, you had guys that were, white belts and blue belts winning $500, for a jiu-jitsu match that they did, for a couple jiu-jitsu match. I think it's super cool that we were able to do that, and especially in the time that we've been able to do that, where 2023, we didn't give away any money. A year and a half later, we have enough sponsorships and enough stuff coming through that we could pump out, a couple $1,000s worth of money to, multiple divisions of people. So I think it's super cool that we've been able to do that. And, it's been fun.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that like any tournament that I've seen gives prize money to like beginner level. We have different divisions, obviously, in Nogi, because the absolutes are you have different divisions. But I think like the beginners or even advanced, I know expert usually that's the case, but I don't know if there's any other tournaments that give out money to those beginner levels.
Yeah, I think you're right. I know it's becoming a little more common now.
Yeah.
Because people are realizing, hey, athletes got to get paid. So more and more tournaments are doing some sort of payout. It is typically in the absolute and typically the upper belts. So I do think we may be one of the only, if not one of the very few, that actually lets white belts win some money, and they go against other white belts.
Yeah.
It's not a white belt entering into an absolute going against a black belt, 50 pounds heavier than them. It's white belts going against white belts, and whoever wins gets the cash.
Mm-hmm. Why? I know the incentive usually is to get the upper belts there and to compete. Do you guys? I'm curious for both of your opinions. Why do you think it's harder to get those black belts, maybe even brown belts, out there to compete more consistently?
Probably scared.
Pride.
Like,
Ego.
I mean, because you get into it where like if you're a black belt, right, all of a sudden you have this pressure on you that you're supposed to look a certain way in front of people, and so many people mistakenly, I've seen it happen. I remember before I got my black belt, I had a match as a brown belt with a black belt, and we battled, and I beat him in overtime. Right, good. It was a good match. Afterwards came up, we're talking, and we're buddies, right? So we're hanging out, whatever else. And he said, "Man, when you get your black belt, don't stop competing." He said, because your students will have more respect for you no matter what, win or lose, if you're out there doing it. And you see where it happens a lot of times where black belts, when they get their black belt, they get nervous, they get afraid, they stop competing, and they don't get out there and test it anymore. And I'm not saying that every black belt needs to compete, but you'll see someone literally compete, get black belt, stop competing. And so I think a lot of times it's that, right? And there may be some reason for that, because a lot of times if you're going to be competing as a black belt, you want to be in the best shape you can be and everything else. So sometimes you have to have more of a run up for it. But at the same time, I think sometimes a lot of black belts would be fine if they just got out there and did the damn thing. I've some of my best competition performances happened with almost no real preparation other than I'm in the gym training like normal. So I think it's just a lot, like I think Jeff said, pride, worry of looking bad, the fear of that. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't compete. I'm not saying all people, because some people don't really want to do it, but there's people that want to compete that if they knew they could win, they would do it. But because they don't know they're going to win, they don't do it. Like, well, then that's like, there's an issue there. That like, it's like, if you want to compete, but you don't, because you don't know if you're going to win or you're nervous or whatever, then it's probably just like a fear thing or a pride thing.
Jeff, what do you think?
I agree.
Probably the
completely.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but I feel like, I don't know, if you're going against people of your level, going against other black belts, I don't see that as like, they're skilled. If you have a black belt, you're skilled. You've earned that. You've put the time in. So I don't know. Like, I don't necessarily, like, for me, I think I've competed a little bit more frequently as of late. I took a good break after brown belt, like 4.5 years. And then when I got my black belt, I think I was a black belt for a couple years.
Yeah.
And then I was like, all right, I feel like I'm ready. I wanted to kind of grow into my belt a little bit. I don't even know if that's even a thing, or if it was just family and just making sure the time aligned. But like, I feel like I needed to test it at black belt. I was like, I got to see what this is all about. Like, to see if am I okay? Am I good enough? Should I be a black belt? It doesn't matter. I mean, I am, but I just wanted to almost like prove it to myself and see where my game stood. And, like I said, and I've done that a couple of times at the Jiu-Jitsu Open. I've enjoyed my experience. I definitely learned every time I've been out there. I've learned, I've worked on certain things, and then certain things you decide you find that you have holes and you need work as well. Even if you have a quote unquote win some matches, you still find that you have a lot of work. And we talked about in the last podcast that it's just, I'm very critical of myself, and I just and it's good. It puts a fire underneath you again. And you're like, I want to go out there and do better next time. I want to be more dominant in my matches.
Well, going to your thing that you're talking about, like I understand the nerves and the pressure that come from it. Like probably the most nervous or on edge or pressure that I've ever felt from anything that I've ever done competition wise was a local tournament where it was an open tournament and they gave some cash money, some cash prize away for black belts. And it was just open invite. Whoever wanted to compete could compete. And I think it ended up being 4 of us, 4 black belts, 1 from Ohio. And then the rest of us were in Louisville. Right. And so we're there competing. And, you know, I've never had that much pressure because around me, we took out this is 2013. We took a huge team to that particular competition. It was like around 60 people plus spectators. So there's probably like 100 plus of our guys just around the place. Right. And then one of the guys that I competed against that day had 2 wins over me previously. And then the other guy had beaten me by, the other Louisville coach had beaten me by an advantage at Chicago. And then I had one of our guys was another coach, right? So I had, you know, it was a round robin style. So I had to go against each person. And I remember feeling some serious pressure because I don't want to lose in front of all of our guys and, you know, to another coach in Louisville. That's going to feel terrible. And then, you know, I don't want to lose to this other guy who's beat me, like, you know, submitted me twice in front of all our guys. Tons of pressure. But at the same time, if you're a black belt and you're a leader of the gym, well, that's what you signed up for. So deal with it, right? Like we all, like every job has its perks and the cons to it, right? And one of the cons is if you're in a leadership position, there's typically a lot more pressure on you. That's the bargain. That's the deal, right?
Yeah.
So you just deal with it and you bear it. And, you know, luckily the competition went well and I won all my matches, but it was a lot of pressure. And so I can understand why people have it. But again, that's the way that it's supposed to work. You're supposed to just deal with the pressure and go with it.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, do you get nerves still? Competition nerves? I mean, a lot of people do. And we've talked about it's kind of a normal thing. I feel like the more frequent, for me personally, the more frequently I've competed, the nerves have gotten less. Like I think the most nervous I was my first white belt tournament. I still remember it because I threw up in my mouth guard after the fact. I remember this shit. Yeah. I was pulling my mouth guard out and I don't know. I tried to eat like a protein bar before. I don't know why. And like, I took my mouth guard out and like gave it to my dad. And I was like, go rinse this out. Cause like, I was that nervous. I remember it was the most nervous I've ever been. Cause probably cause it was very foreign. I was very ill prepared. I mean, you realize how I don't think I had a takedown. I didn't even know how to do a takedown. And so somehow we ended up on the ground, but I don't know how that was. Probably by me getting mounted. But do you still get nervous, like as far as like competing now, and you kind of do it all the time?
Not nearly as much as I used to. Yeah. And what really changed was that tournament I talked about earlier, my first black belt tournament. And part of that is because when I compete, I don't warm up. I don't prep. I don't go get on the warm up mats and start doing some drills or flow rolling. And that's what happened at that tournament. I was there as a competitor. I wasn't, you know, hosting or working and just got called off in the middle of it. But I was there as a competitor and it was pretty disorganized. And next thing I know, they're saying, Jeff, you're up. Well, I was like the first match of the day.
Oh, wow.
Had no clue that they were about to start. Like no one knew what was going on. Next thing I know, they said, Jeff, you're up. I've still got my sweats on. I don't know where any of my stuff is. So I just ripped my stuff off, go get on the mat, submitted my opponent, just, you know, had a great day. And that's what I've done ever since then. Because what I've found is whenever I start to warm up, or if I put my headphones on and I'm like, you know, grooving to music and whatever I'm doing, I'm thinking about the match and I'm getting in my own head and I'm over game planning what I'm going to do. And I'm worried about what are they going to do. I don't do that anymore. I just go out there. I know where my skill set is. I know things that I want to avoid. And I just go out there and I do me. And I've had a good couple of years of competition with that mindset. And now most of the time I compete are at the Jiu-Jitsu Opens. So I'll be in the middle of bracketing, refereeing, running the tournament, organizing all of it, dealing with customer service issues, dealing with coaches, competitors. And next thing you know, they say, Jeff, you're up. Like, oh, great. Throw my stuff off, go compete. Well, once I'm done, I've got to get back to work. So there's no time for me to warm up. There's no time for me to think about it. I've actually performed better like that because I'm not in my head and I'm out there, I'm having fun. And if I lose, so what? Like that was my biggest fear talking about why so many black belts don't compete is I think it's fear of losing. And like Chewy said, you know, we've all had that fear of losing as a black belt, as a coach with our guys around. But I'm at the point now, like, so what? I'm here to have fun. I'm here to test myself. I'm here to give the competitors a good experience, because oftentimes I'll only roll if it helps fill out a bracket. So if there's an expert division that doesn't have enough matches, I'll jump in to give them some matches. So even if I lose, I'm like, you know what? I at least gave those guys a better experience because I jumped in there and gave them some matches.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I've reffed some of the Jiu-Jitsu Opens and then competed. So I think that's been kind of helpful for me, because it takes my mind off of like thinking and waiting, because I'm working and I'm doing stuff and I'm focusing on the competitors and really focused on the matches and refereeing. So I think that I agree with that. I still like to warm up for sure. I like to get a good sweat in. I think it helps me, because sometimes I think, for this recent tournament, I kind of did a basic little warm up, and I didn't get a lot of I didn't get a good sweat going. And I think so one of my first matches was more of like a warm up. I was just trying to get in the flow. And, so for me, my first match is always a little bit slow, I think, just because I'm trying to get in there. Chewy, I don't know about you. It's probably the same.
It depends. I mean,
If you don't get a warm up in.
Oh, I got to get a warm up.
Yeah, if you don't, I didn't quite get a warm up. So I think I was
I've had some matches where I didn't get warm ups where and there is something to it, right? Where I remember there was one match in particular. I was coaching. It was up in Indiana, and I had, my division had got called up, and I was walking out it was this, remember the Egos? They used to have the Egos in Indiana. So they had this little coffee shop attached to the venue. And so I walked over there, got a coffee and a smoothie. And I'm walking out, drinking my smoothie. And all of a sudden I hear Nick Albin on mat. Oh, they're calling me. So I sit down my coffee, smoothie, get out there on the mat. And I'm wrestling with this guy, kind of stretching at the same time, kind of kicking my legs back a little bit, trying to get warmed up. And so I spent the first minute just sort of locking up and moving around with him, and then started to gear up. But you definitely didn't have the time to psych yourself up or psych yourself out beforehand. And so you just got thrown into it, which there could be some advantages to that. For me, I just feel like my engine isn't running yet. I feel like I'm an old Buick, where I can't just take it out of the garage and go. I have to let the engine run for a little bit, get warmed up. But this is the thing about pre-comp or competitions is you can listen to what people do, but everybody's got to find their own way, because we're all a little different. Different things sort of work differently, right? So you have to find your own way for warming up and try it out and experience it. And everybody's a little different with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's benefits to both. I think not knowing when you're going to go, and all of a sudden you're going, you're like, well, didn't have time to think about it. I'm there now. So you got to get after it. Let me ask you guys about a little bit of the biggest lesson maybe you've learned so far after running the Chewjitsu Open for it's been about a year, a little bit over a year of running these tournaments exclusively, traveling all over kind of the, we'd say mid, the region, East Coast, kind of Midwest kind of area.
Midwest, Southeast Coast.
Yeah. What have you guys learned so far? Or maybe what's the biggest lesson you've taken away so far of these tournaments?
I mean, to say the biggest lesson, that's tough, because there's been a whole heck of a lot of lessons.
I mean, things have we've adjusted a lot of different things. There wasn't anything that completely just fell apart, right? We've had to adjust the rules a bit in our reffing, teaching the refs. And that's kind of a constant ongoing thing, because we're running a ref's decision and they're judging it. And so every now and then we'll get matches where we have to review them and kind of go back to the refs and sort of maybe make some tweaks on verbiage or whatever. Sometimes you'll have some random snag that comes up where, something you didn't plan for, and all of a sudden you're having to fix something for the next competition. So there's all kinds of little things. But it's hard to say the one thing. I mean, for me, which is not necessarily it's nothing new. It's just that you can't please everybody, right? I mean, that kind of goes with anything. No matter how, because you'll have a competition that goes perfect and everything seems to go off without a hitch. You get so much positive feedback, and there'll be one person, whether by their fault or our fault, something happened. And it's you know what I mean? And then sometimes you will go out of your way to help that person, to do everything you can to make it a good experience, and it just doesn't matter. But that's just kind of anytime you're in a service industry type thing, if you're doing anything where you're trying to, do something for people, that's always going to happen. I guess for me, where I'm getting with that is, I'll take we've taken a lot of constructive criticism from people and then try to improve the competition. But I can't sort of zero in on just one thing that was the biggest.
Yeah.
I think I would kind of piggyback off on that. And speaking on a grand scale of the biggest lesson for me is that customer service and relationship building pays off. And I say that because Chewy is kind of touching this on the customer service side. Our tournament, we know we have a good tournament. We know we have a good product. We know we have a good rule set. We know we have a design that competitors and coaches want. We've experienced that the last year and a half, right, with the growth of the tournament. But I think beyond just the actual operation of the tournament itself, I think the customer service aspect of it, of everybody that comes to us with an issue or a question or a recommendation, we give them our full attention of, hey, we hear you. We want to resolve this. Let's work through it. Let's figure this out. Relationships are incredibly important in this community because jiu-jitsu is not a big community. And we talked about getting black belts to tournaments. Well, black belts are typically coaches or owners for the most part, right? They're likely the coach or the owner of the gym. And a gym is not going to go to your tournament if that black belt typically doesn't go to support it, because that they bring their students with them. So it's building relationships with coaches and black belts and owners to get people involved in the program, to get them to understand what the rule is, to get them to want to be a part of it. And the customer service side of that is we are very competitor friendly. We're very guest focused, guest friendly. Our focus is to make sure every competitor has a good experience, and what can we do to address this? There's always going to be somebody who's upset, but we don't just say, you know what, no big deal. We're going to focus on these other 99%, not worry about you. No, we're going to focus on that 1%. We're going to focus on solving these problems and these issues. One example I'll give is actually our refund policy. So I was signing up for a tournament the other day. This tournament's not for another 6 or 7 months down the road. And there are no full refunds. If you sign up 7 months out and you cancel 5 months out, you only get a credit back. And that's what most tournaments are. Most tournaments give a credit, not a full refund. We give a full refund up until 30 days out, which few tournaments do that. We also give a credit up until 3 days out. But even if it's within the last 3 days, if someone emails me the day before, like, hey, I broke my hand, I can't compete, no problem, man. We'll give you a credit. Come see us again next time. And they come back. So we could say, nope, you missed that 3 day rule, and no, your money is ours. Sorry. We don't do that.
Yeah.
Because we think customer service is important. We think the relationships are important. We want people to come see us again. So yeah, it may cost us, money or time and up front, but it pays off in the long run. I think we're seeing the results of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's nice. Yeah, people are going to want to come back if you don't feel like you care about what their opinion is, and if they're unhappy, you try to do something about it or address it. I think just people want to feel heard, right?
Yeah. We change rules because of those issues. Like Chewy mentioned, like we change rules if someone has a bad experience. And they bring it up to us how this rule impacted that. And we're like, you know what, maybe we can tweak this. And we've done that numerous times over the past year and a half.
One thing I will say is it kind of sort of on a positive sort of note, talking about lessons, the sort of, the idea that I had was that if we, put together sort of this rule set and system for winning, that people would be more apt to, try to finish each other. And this past year we ran, I think the lowest we had was 65%, the highest being
we had one below 70%. That was it. Yeah.
And the rest were 75% submission rates. So, throughout the whole entire year, 3 out of 4 matches are finished by submission. And, I remember being in Chicago for our Chicago tournament, and that same weekend, another competition was going on by a very prestigious organization, and they were having a big tournament. And I'm like watching our matches, and all the matches are pretty interesting to watch. And then I was watching some matches because I was catching up on some of them, and many of them were very boring, where people would get up 1 point and then they would just stop doing anything. They were just trying to basically stall out and win, which is fine. That's the tactic. But I think there's something about having a goose egg over top of a goose egg over top of the on the scorecard, where you don't know that you're going to win. And if you don't keep going for it, there's a possibility you could lose. And so that uncertainty creates a situation where it's just you're forcing people to have to go after each other. And because we're not necessarily placing emphasis over a takedown versus, say, a guard pass versus a submission attempt, it just means that you have to go after the person and try to finish them. And I think that sort of like the hypothesis of that, like, this is what I think would happen. It ended up working out that way. And that was a cool lesson to be like, oh, hey, it actually worked. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to create a good experience. We wanted people to finish each other, and it's actually happening.
So to follow up on that, like what's maybe the biggest change you guys have made from the feedback you've gotten over the past years? Is there one change specifically that you guys have obviously, like, I think what I've noticed, because I worked one of the very first Jiu-Jitsu Opens and then this most recent one, and I've noticed like you guys really evolved like the education for the referees and like the scorekeepers and everybody. I think it's like we have meetings, like there's training beforehand. You have to kind of follow up and really understand the rule set and get a good idea. And we talk it through. So I think that's what I've noticed. Like I think the education piece of it, you guys spend a lot of time because you want everybody to be on the same page. You want to basically have like if you have a different referee like refereeing the same match, you want them to get the same result. Essentially, you want consistency along, all the matches and all the decisions.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that's probably the biggest change overall.
Yeah.
When we did our first tournament at Chewy's gym, there was no training, right? All the referees were members of Derby City, many of which had never ref before. Our scorekeepers were some members of the gym, but also like spouses or even children of our staff. And it was like, hey, here are the basics. We went through a quick pre-event rule meeting, and that was about it. But we're only as good as our staff, and we can have the coolest tournament design and rule set out there. But if we don't have trained referees and trained scorekeepers that are managing the tournament well, then it's not going to be successful. So we put that training together, and it's helped align everybody on the same page. It's helped clarify any questions or what ifs. That's been a really big positive change.
Mm.
I agree.
Yeah,
I'm kind of right there. I think the reffing and the staff training, because it's like every competition, it's like Jeff will send me a message and we'll deliberate over, hey, should they be able to put their forearm in the throat and push, or can they do it? Can they do it to get out of, when someone's breaking posture? But we don't want kids to just sit there and crank on people's necks this way. So let's put that in the verbiage. Okay, now we have to let the refs know and that kind of stuff. So that iterative process has probably been the big thing. Whereas like every competition, there's an adjustment made, and then it goes into telling the staff and the refs about it, and back and forth, back and forth.
Mm. Is there one specific challenge you guys felt like you have to overcome? Like one major thing that's been kind of a hindrance or something that's kind of, you feel like you have to work through or you've had to work through?
I don't think this has explicitly been said to anybody, but I think this is probably the normal challenge that I imagine most new businesses and new competitions would have to work through. Is I remember our competition in Lansing was one of our smaller ones last year. And then we had Frankenmuth, which was our biggest one last year. It was massive. And many of the people from Lansing came back to Frankenmuth, and they brought people with them. And I even talked to a couple of the coaches who either competed in Louisville or competed in Lansing, or they came to Lansing. And they told me that they were sort of on a scouting mission, where they were going to see what this competition was like to make sure that they weren't going to get screwed over, because they had gone to other competitions that did not. They ran late. They didn't have professional sort of, because again, Jeff and Erica and all the staff, like they run a really professionally ran tournament. It runs smooth. It's not all over the place. It's running like it should be. It's professionally ran. And so a lot of competitions just aren't. It's something that sort of plagues the jiu-jitsu world, right? Like this is why, love them or hate them sometimes with the IBJJF, people like to poop on them, but at the same time, they're really well ran for how big they get and everything, right? So it's one of the things that sort of takes them a notch above people. And it's why a lot of people will go to those competitions, where sometimes these regional competitions, it's all over the place. And so I think a lot of people were making sure that they weren't going to have that experience for themselves or for them students. And so then they were bringing more people back with them. And it happened with that Louisville, where someone's like, yeah, I came here last year. Now I brought the team with me. And so I think that there's a little bit of just dealing with that sort of, it's another tournament. Are they just like this other one? Are we going to have these bad experiences we had there, here, that kind of deal? And so I think we're fighting with that a little bit. And I think that's an obstacle of sorts that I think we're slowly overcoming, because people we're having a lot of repeats where they come back and they bring more people with them.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, about you?
I think a big challenge is getting people to understand our Madison bracketing and our weight class system. I think there's this fear of, oh, you don't have any weight classes and it's Madison bracketing, I'll be paired up against anybody. and I may go against someone who's 50 pounds heavier than me. No, that's not what it is. We don't have any preset weight classes, but we have weight classes. We just don't make those weight classes until after weigh-ins. So I think getting people to understand that, no, and Chewy used the example of Bubba, you're not going against the 300-pound Bubba as a 150 pounder. That's not what we're doing. But it's how do we market that? How do we communicate that out so people truly understand that, no, you're still going against people within a couple pounds of you, just like any other tournament. You may not join a 170-pound weight class where you're 164 going against 168 pounder, right? But you may be 168 going against someone who's 172. There's no imaginary line that's preset between those two weights that separates you. 4 pounds apart is 4 pounds apart, whether it's an imaginary line or not. So it's just getting people to understand that we do have weight classes. We just structure them a little bit differently.
Yeah. And we do that all the time at the gym. I mean, we're going against guys and people 20 pounds heavier, sometimes 20 pounds lighter. And we do that all the time. Obviously in a tournament format, it's a little bit different. The stakes are a little bit higher, but like you're still, most people are comfortable doing that to some capacity. I mean, 20 pounds is pretty good difference, but like 10 pounds is really not that huge of a deal.
And even that though doesn't happen in our tournament.
No,
it's very rare for someone to have a 10-pound spread. So our rule, whenever we're trying to create brackets, especially like for the adults, is no more than a 10-pound spread. But most people are 3 to 5 pounds of each other. Yeah. If someone gets above 10 pounds, we're typically calling the competitors over there. We're talking to coaches saying, "Hey, you're 165. I don't have anybody within 10 pounds of you, but I've got a 178 pounder who'll take the match. Do you want it?" And they have the right to refuse. But people aren't going to get thrown to a 20, 30-pound weight difference unless they're a heavyweight. I mean, if you're a 230 pounder, yeah, you may get stuck with a 260 pounder just like any other normal tournament. But most people can expect a pretty close weight gap.
Is there? I'm just curious. Like, I've never even I've heard of Frankenmuth, but like it doesn't seem like a jiu-jitsu hotbed for me. Like, do you think because of Lansing, that's why Frankenmuth was bigger? Or like, do you guys even have like an idea like this is going to be a big tournament and this is not? Sometimes it's just surprising.
I was surprised. I mean, but I think it was all of there's a lot of schools around Frankenmuth.
I see.
And Frankenmuth's also kind of a destination for a lot of people. So it was one of these places where a lot of people were coming to, they were turning into a weekend with their family where they go up there, they can do that whole thing. And again, talking to a lot of the people, there were a lot of people there that were at Lansing that came back and brought teams. And there was even one black belt coach who competed in Louisville at the beginning of the year, who then brought up his whole darn team to Frankenmuth,
Very cool. So yeah, like we're literally getting a lot of repeat people.
I mean, Jeff, were you surprised about Frankenmuth?
I wanted to cancel Frankenmuth.
Yeah, because
after Lansing, our smallest tournament of the year, I'm like, man, I don't think I want to go to Frankenmuth and deal with this again. And the numbers just kept ticking up, and absolutely blown away that we had such a large tournament. It was awesome. It was an awesome.
So you think it was because of the proximity, and also I guess Frankenmuth is like a destination, like people vacation there.
It's a small little German Christmas touristy town. It's real small, but it's a cool tourist destination. I'd never heard of it.
Yeah.
But I do think it's because of Lansing. I think we built our brand in Lansing.
I see.
I think people checked us out. Even though it was small, they still had a good experience because we put on a good product and things went really well. And then we had one nearly 3 times the size 2 months later in a town an hour and a half away.
Nice. Yeah. What would you say, like, honestly, like your brand and like your mission? What, Chewy, I'll start with you because it's kind of like your idea, like it's got your name on it, right? Not your idea per se, but it's got your name on it. Like, what is the mission? Like, if you have to like just describe the mission of the Chewjitsu Open.
I mean, the mission first and foremost is to give people a really good experience, right? That's first, right? To me, like whenever I get into something, it's like, let's try to remove all the stuff that we all hate and try to like make, that's a good starting point, right? There's a lot of things that we dislike in competitions. Let's try to get rid of as much of that as we can and do that. So, for instance, with Jeff and Erica, they run and Jeff, Erica, Ryan, the guys behind that are making the brackets and running things, all the refs and the staff, right? You're not going to go there and have refs just sort of twiddling their thumbs, not doing anything. I remember I'd go to tournaments and you'd see a mat open and then, why isn't there anybody here? Our mats are getting switched around and there's no communication. Like, you just don't deal with that stuff. It's professionally run. And then, again, a lot of times for me, and again, this is, I compete in point-based competitions. It's fine. But just thinking about a lot of people getting into jiu-jitsu in one of the rubs. People hate competing in a situation where if someone gets on top of them with a takedown and does nothing for the rest of the match, that person wins. You know, you could get 2 points for the takedown. The rest of the match, that person spends, 5 minutes escaping after submission attempt, but you're never able to get on top of them, but that person wins. Now, in the gym, we would think if I spent 5 minutes chasing this guy down with submission attempts, even though I couldn't sweep him, I would think in my head, I got the better of that exchange. But because of the points, like, oh, well, he wins because he got 2 points. I wanted to kind of get rid of that, right? Like, let's get rid of that so people can just go after it and not have these matches where you lose off those kinds of decisions, right? But as far as the mission goes, one of the things I did want to create was a tournament where a lot of people get in their own heads and it messes them up in competitions, right? We all know this. Competitions is very much a mental, but it's just as much it's a physical, but just as much as a mental thing. And so I wanted to create a format where you could turn your brain off. You didn't have to think about all the rules and everything else. The only thing you had to think about was just go after this other human being with your jiu-jitsu, and that's it, right? That's it. And so that was kind of the thing, because I think for me, when I noticed the biggest jump in my abilities to compete was when I learned how to like turn my brain off. When I could learn how to like not get so worked up about it, not worrying about winning, losing, and just go after someone. And that, like, my competition abilities got better. And so I wanted to create a competition that facilitated that, to where people got lots of matches. They had a lot of opportunities to test their game, and they got a chance to turn their damn brain off and just attack someone with jiu-jitsu and have a great experience doing it that would want to bring them back. I mean, and that's it, and beyond that, it really is just, that's it for me.
Jeff, what about you?
And I'm just having fun. Yeah. This is it's such a cool program that we're doing, building relationships all across the country with different people. But I want to change the industry. I want to change the industry because I feel like the competition scene has kind of stagnated, and a lot of tournaments have the same rule sets, the same formats, the same styles. You can go to 3 different tournaments and they may have little nuances here and there, but they're still roughly the same. There is no other tournament like ours. We are the only ones that do the Madison bracketing. We're one of the there are 1 or 2 that do a pooled bracketing, which is similar but still with preset weight classes. We're the only ones that do Madison bracketing. We're one of the very few sub only. We're the only ones who do the absolute division cash payouts like we do broken up between belts. And by the way, we pay women the same as men. A lot of tournaments don't do that. They may give men $1,000 and women $500. You see those advertised frequently. We don't do that. We treat women the same as men, exact same rules, exact same everything, same payouts. So I want to change the industry and make jiu-jitsu tournaments fun. And we've actually already seen this. We've seen other tournaments who have started to use similar phrases that we do in terms of like their marketing. Mm-hmm. We have seen a few others talk about Madison bracketing. We've seen some changes. We're like, yep, they're getting that from us. So we're already having an impact, and we're just getting started, man. This is just the beginning.
What's the with the pay and everything like that? Is there a certain maybe, I don't even say demographic, but like group, like maybe older people, younger people, men, women? What have you seen like growth in as far as running these tournaments over the past year? Have you seen a lot of growth in a certain division, like maybe masters or young? I mean, usually like the young kids are always competing. Like some of these kids compete every weekend. Have you all seen like a certain group of people that you've seen like a higher registration rate, more competitors in?
I think women for sure. It's tough for women to compete in jiu-jitsu because not many of them do it. And part of the reason not many of them do it isn't because they don't want to, but it's because when they go to tournaments, they often don't have any matches anywhere close to their experience, their age, or their weight. So it's like, why go to a tournament? Why register whenever I'm not going to get any matches unless it's like an IBJJF or some, massive tournament like that. But we put a lot of effort into marketing to women to, again, the same payouts. We treat them just like the men. And man, I love women's jiu-jitsu. At this last tournament in Louisville a week and a half ago, I put the women's expert division right next to my table where I was doing the bracketing because I wanted to watch it because I knew some of the ladies that were in there. I knew there's going to be some fireworks. And I'm telling you, man, when this women's expert division was going on, there were just like tons of people standing around watching. Like they stopped what they're doing to watch these women roll. It was phenomenal. Some of the coolest leg exchanges I saw. I think Jen Greenwald was out there. Camilla Estrada. Riley Boyle. I mean, these are phenomenal ladies, and just these incredible leg exchanges, cranking on each other's heels. It was just super cool to watch. We had over 70 women registered for that tournament, which is a huge turnout. So there's been a big growth there because women get matches with us. We put a lot of effort into making matchups happen. They're going to get multiple matches. They're going to have good experience. And I think that's spreading in that community.
That makes sense. Yeah. Chew, about you, see anything like any kind of group of people or even like coaches or like more coaches competing or anything like that even?
Yeah, I don't know that it's just like one demographic. It's all sort of growing, but there's more masters, there's more women. Obviously, you're always going to have like young adult dudes. Like that's plenty of them to go around. But getting some of the older guys and some of the women, and they're more and more of them are getting into it, which I think is good. Because like the same problem that Jeff's talking about that women have, you have a lot of times at like masters divisions where they want to compete, but they also don't want to get like thrown into like a division with a bunch of 20-year-olds. And so again, kind of getting that out there that, hey, we have some old fellas that are out there too getting after it. So join up, So, what I think is kind of interesting, this is just so sort of off topic because you're talking about gin, like, we have people coming from like, it's not just like the surrounding areas, like Louisville, for instance. We had, gins coming from Montana. We have people coming from Michigan. We have people coming from Georgia, from Mississippi. I mean, like all over the place, dude. It's wild to see. I remember the first Jiu-Jitsu Open we did in Louisville at the gym. We had a guy that drove 8 hours that morning to be there to compete. We had people from all over the place. So you're drawing a lot of people into these competitions. So, which I think has been really cool. Like a lot of the people in Louisville, you're getting a competition in Louisville that's drawing people from all over. It's not just the Louisville area or like the hour or so behind. You're getting people from anywhere from like 6 to 8 hours away coming in to compete. So I think that's cool. And, the more that continues, the more competitors that'll be able to go around, the more matches people will be able to have.
So here's a question I'll end with. Where do you guys want to see the tournament go next year or two? Like, what's your magic 8 ball you can kind of predict, or where do you want to see it go? What do you want it to look like? Maybe it's already looking that way, but where do you want it to be in a year or two? Jeff, start with you.
I think location-wise, we want to go out west. We've had a lot of demand from Southern California, looking at Austin, Texas. So looking at getting out west to service that part of the country. Also looking at going south a little bit more. So Atlanta, Florida. Right now we're in the Midwest, the North, and the East. But it's time for us to expand our blueprint. We just got to figure out what our capacity is, because this is a part-time gig for all of us. We've all got, full-time jobs separate from this, and all of our staff are full-time jobs. They just do this as a fun gig on the side. So we've got to figure out what is our capacity. But I think expanding our footprint and taking this awesome new concept to the rest of the country.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing that I can think of. I'm not a big, it's not to say that I don't have goals or anything, but I don't like to set too many expectations, because sometimes like your expectations get in the way, and sometimes what you think is going to happen doesn't happen. Like the Frankenmuth tournament is an example. You set an expectation, this one's probably not going to be much because of the Lance, and then all of a sudden it blows it out. So I'm very much like, let's just see what happens. Even like going into a competition, I never expect to win. Let me go see what happens. Because if you go into it thinking you're going to win, you expect it to win, then it's like, well, what happens if you don't, right? You create some issues. I remember when we did the first Chewjitsu Open in Louisville, I remember talking to a couple guys, and they were telling me, man, did you expect it was going to be big? I'm like, no, I didn't expect anything. I just wanted to see what happened. Well, we can adjust from there, and kind of going back to it. I don't know about expectations where I'd like to see it, but like Jeff, I would like to test other areas. Because it's just interesting to see which areas sort of pick up and which ones don't. But there just seems to be a lot of areas where there's a lot of jiu-jitsu, and there's a lot of people that are sending me messages like, hey, come out west, come out to California, come out to Austin, come out to this place. And so it would be fun and to see like what happens when we go out there. Can we create something there? And would the tournament, would it take in those areas? And so that kind of thing, because for me, it's, I don't know. I'm not, it's one of those things where my favorite part of the competition is going in there And then you see people have a great experience there where they're having good matches. You're talking to them like, man, this is the most fun tournament I've ever been to. For me, that's kind of like, that's a rewarding thing where you're talking to people and they're having such a good time from it. And to know that like, hey, like some bearded asshole was on the internet telling me to go to this competition. I came to it and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. I'll come back again and again and again. Like that's rewarding. Right. And so, for me, I like those individual experiences, and I would like to experience those out in other areas to see if we can recreate that kind of magic out there.
Yeah. And when's the next tournament? Where is it, and what's the location?
Chicago. It's on the north side, Northbrook, Illinois. So suburb of Chicago. It's on March 29th.
So as far as sponsors, you guys already said that it's been like a $500 payout for the absolute divisions. Are these the sponsors you guys are going to have kind of is it like for the year, or like if people want to sponsor it, like how does that work? What does that process look like?
Yeah, we've got a really unique sponsorship program where, like Chewy touched on earlier, if a sponsor invests in us, if they purchase one of our packages, that money gets passed directly onto the competitors. So our base payout is $250 for at the absolute divisions, and every time a sponsor joins on, it increases that. So for Louisville, for example, First Optimal was one of our first sponsors to jump on. They sponsored us in Frankenmuth last year. We made a big announcement, all right, from 250 to 350. And then Eli Coffee, he jumped on the Louisville event. We're like, all right, great. Now we're going from 350 to 500. So every time we get a new sponsor, it increases that amount. And the benefits of the sponsor is, you get exposure to hundreds of thousands of jiu-jitsu athletes in the industry, whether it's through social media or in person. And we've got different packages, different deals, starting as low as $1,000 and up to, significantly more depending on what you're looking for. But it includes social media shout outs. It includes mat stickers. It includes booth space. It includes, videos and email blasts and different things like that. So it really just depends on how much somebody wants to do. But First Optimal has been a great early sponsor for us. And they're also doing Chicago. So Chicago's currently at a $350 payout thanks to First Optimal. And they've indicated some interest in future tournaments as well. So we hope to, continue to build that relationship. I know Chewy just did a podcast with them the other day. Mm-hmm. So there's a really cool mutual benefit from the Jiu-Jitsu Open, Chewy, and whatever sponsor participates in it. The sky's the limit with that. The more people that get involved, the bigger it grows, and the bigger the tournament gets.
Yeah. And you're at a tournament where you have hundreds of people walking around. So if you have product or you have a service or whatever, I mean, you could be very creative with the way that you want to, essentially let people know about that. And I mean, you have a ton of people that are essentially athletes and, that range from different age groups, whatever. And, you could really, if you have a product or a service that is right for like jiu-jitsu, it's a great place. Because you just have tons of them walking around, and generally, they're going to come stop at your stuff. And if you have a good creative way to bring them over, they'll be happy to go over and check your stuff. And we typically have, like the absolute winners will put product in their hands. They get to take it back to their gyms and, that kind of thing. So I think it's unique, and it'll be interesting to see it grow.
And to Chewy's point, it's more than just a cash investment. So our very first sponsor was Jelly Jitsu, and they had these really cool ceramic travel mugs that we gave out to absolute division winners. And then we got Gorilla Box. Gorilla Box are these self-cleaning mouth guards that we started giving out to absolute division winners. And then here in Louisville, First Optimal, they gave out $150 credit to their services to the absolute division winners, in addition to the cash that got added on. They also did a raffle for some supplement giveaways. And then Eli Coffee, he also gave a supplement pack out to the absolute division winners. So the cash is a part of it, but like Chewy said, they can be creative in how they want to get their product in front of the competitors. So it's a really unique program that you don't really see at any other tournament.
Yeah. You guys did a good job. They were like, it was nice to see the booths, and like, Eli's one of my coaches, so I can vouch for him. And we had Joe, and Joe from First Optimal was on the podcast a couple episodes ago, and he's got tons of knowledge on, basically like optimization of the human body, right? Like how to make your body work better, function better, be healthier. And, that can ultimately help your performance in jiu-jitsu. And, that's all we want, right? We want to go in, have a good performance, feel good, win if we can. And then those guys and those sponsors are there helping you do that. So I think it feeds into the jiu-jitsu environment and, the goal of jiu-jitsu, essentially make yourself kind of be able to train for a long time at a high level.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Chewy, you got anything?
That's it, guys. If you want to get information on the Jiu-Jitsu Open, obviously you can go look it up on Instagram, or you can punch in Jiu-Jitsu Open into Google, whatever you want. Look up our competitions. We have a bunch coming up this year. We're constantly releasing updates on everything and adding to them if we end up throwing another one into the mix, which sometimes happens. But again, we'll be in Chicago coming up in March at the time of recording this, 2025. And so again, check it out. If you guys are in that area, come support us, come get some competitions in. I'll be walking around during the day. So, again, if you want to chat for a little bit, whatever, probably depending in March, who knows, I might have a rolling session going on. Sometimes I'll do that from time to time at the competitions. And then we do the seminar on Sunday. So come check us out. It's a great tournament. It would be a great chance if you've never competed before, or you've had plenty of competitions. Either way, we'll get you a lot of matches in, and you'll have a good time doing it.
Links will be in the show notes for the Jiu-Jitsu Open, so people can just click there if they want to just get a direct link to all the tournament information they need. Awesome, Jeff. Thanks for being on the show, man.
All right, thanks for having me.
Good having you again.
Thanks.
All right, guys. So thanks for being here with us. Again, hopefully I'll see some of you coming up at the upcoming Jiu-Jitsu Opens this year in 2025. Looking forward to it. If you guys go to them, remember there's a competition on Saturday and there will always be a seminar on Sunday. So if you guys want a chance to learn from me, to roll with me, all that kind of stuff, go to the Sunday seminar afterwards and we'll have some fun. Big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Grapple Science, grapplescience.com is the website. Again, they make the supplement that we have that we've tried called Cognition, which is a no stimulant base. It's not a stimulant based energy supplement, but it'll help give you focus, a little bit of energy for your training sessions. I like it. I've used it a bunch. I don't use it every single day. I like using it on certain sessions, but I definitely know a little bit more increased focus, and maybe I would even potentially say increased creativity when I'm rolling. If you guys want to check it out, go to the website grapplescience.com, and the promo code is Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order. Also, guys, if you want to get a really good CBD supplement to help support you with your recovery, or with a number of different things that CBD can be useful for supporting, you can check out our sponsor, Charlotte's Web. charlottesweb.com is the website, and the promo code is Chewjitsu30 for 30% off the order. Get on their website, look through it, see what you find. If you find something that you think you would want to try, give it a try. My encouragement, which has always been with people, anytime you try a supplement, try it for yourself. All the supplements that we ever list on this podcast, we've tried, we've used, and we like, and that's why they make it onto the list of sponsors, because there's plenty of others that do not make the list of sponsors. And so with the Charlotte's Web supplement, again, I think it's very useful, but I tell people, try it out for a month, see what you think. Like, I've given away samples to students over the years, and some students will come back to me and say, "Hey, bro, what did you give me? I need to get more of that myself." And sometimes, like, they'll come back and they'll say, "Man, I just didn't really feel anything." Everybody's a little different. So again, check it out for yourself. Try it out for a month, see what you think. And again, you can save 30% off using the promo code Chewjitsu30 at the website, charlottesweb.com. Another one of our sponsors is Epic Roll. EpicRollBJJ.com is the website. They make everything from rash guards, shorts, gis, anything and everything jiu-jitsu related. If you want to get some new gear to train in, if you want to get some new jiu-jitsu clothing to wear, check them out at EpicRollBJJ.com. I'll have some new rash guards coming up soon that are made by Epic Roll. I think they're going to be, I got to get one little last prototype tweaked, and I'm making sure it's good. And after that, we're going to run with it. It's going to be awesome. I love their stuff. Wear it every day in the gym. And so if you guys want to check them out, the website is EpicRollBJJ.com. The promo code is Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order on all their gear that they sell on their website. So check it out at Epic Roll. Also, if you guys want to support the podcast directly and become one of our patrons, you can do so by going to the Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. When you join up, you'll obviously be supporting the podcast that you listen to every week. And you'll also, on top of that, get a bunch of different perks. If you want to check out the perks, like the warm-up routines that we give away, some of the seminar recordings we've posted, plus a lot of the extra content that we don't release anywhere else, you can do so by going to the Patreon, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And last but not least, guys, if you want to get my daily email that I send out and join the thousands of people that do, and get access to my Focus Jiu-Jitsu ebook, which will give you 12 different strategies to get more from your open rolling, get more focused training, then do so by going to my website at jujitsu.net/join. And then when you join up, you'll get access to the ebook and the video that comes with it. And then you'll get access to my daily email, and you can unsubscribe at any time. So guys, with that said, thank you so much for being with us this week. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time.